Beyond the hills where the sunlight seemed thinner and the wind whispered through dry grass, there lay a village few remembered, and even fewer visited. Its houses, once bright with painted shutters, leaned under the weight of years. The streets were overgrown with weeds, and the fountains, once lively, now gurgled weakly, almost ashamed of their own silence. This was the kind of place the world forgot. And perhaps the villagers had begun to forget it themselves. One afternoon, a traveler named Elias wandered down the winding road that led to this hidden village. His journey had been long, filled with dusty trails and endless horizons. Elias was not a man who sought trouble. He sought comfort, easy roads, and paths where effort promised reward. Yet, fate, or perhaps curiosity, had guided him here. As he crested the hill, the village emerged below, like a memory struggling to stay alive. Smoke curled faintly from some chimneys, and a few children played in the dusty square, their laughter fragile, almost hesitant. He noticed that most of the houses were shuttered, the gardens wild and untended. The air smelled of old earth and something heavier, neglect. Elias entered the village quietly, letting his steps echo softly against the cobblestones. The few villagers who noticed him watched with cautious eyes, faces lined with worry and tired from labor. "Traveler," called a voice, wavering like a candle's flame. A woman stepped forward, clutching the corner of her worn shawl. "Can you help us?" Elias paused. He studied her for a moment. Her eyes were honest, but weary. "Help? With what?" he asked, genuinely curious, though already feeling the tug of hesitation. "Our village, it is fading," she said. "The wells are low, the crops fail, the children go hungry. We do what we can, but we cannot do it alone anymore." Elias looked around. The signs of decay were clear. Broken carts leaned against walls. Fences sagged. And even the village square, where he had seen the children, had cracks running through its stone. Yet there was also a spark in the eyes of the villagers. A glimmer of hope. The same spark that had kept the village alive all these years despite hardship. He hesitated. Help would not be easy. It would cost him time. Effort. Perhaps days or weeks. It would take him away from the comfortable routine he preferred. The easy roads, the quiet inns, the freedom to wander. Walking away, he realized, would cost nothing. Nothing at all. Still, as he continued down the main street, small gestures reached him. A man carrying a heavy basket struggled up the steps of a crumbling house. A child tugged at his mother's sleeve, pointing toward the fountain that no longer ran. Even the animals, the old horse in the corral, the scrawny goats, seemed to plead silently for care. The village felt alive, even in its decay. Every neglected corner told a story of those who had once tried, those who had once loved, and those who had slowly given up. Elias could see it all, and in that moment, a quiet question settled in his mind. Could he leave it all behind? Could he pass through this village as if it were nothing, taking the road that promised ease, leaving the fading lives behind? And yet, could he walk away knowing that even a small action on his part might save what remained? The villagers watched him, waiting. Some hopeful, some doubtful. The air between them thickened with expectation, unspoken yet heavy. Elias took a deep breath. He had come seeking comfort and convenience. Yet here, in a place forgotten by time and memory, he realized that his next choice, one simple decision, might ripple far beyond this moment, far beyond this village, perhaps even shaping a future he could not yet imagine. The sun dipped lower behind the hills, casting long shadows across the square, and Elias stood at the crossroads, not just of roads, but of destiny itself. Elias spent the night in the village's small inn, a place where the walls sagged and the floorboards creaked, yet still smelled faintly of bread and wood smoke. Outside, the wind whispered through the empty streets, carrying the distant calls of villagers tending to what little work remained. Morning light revealed the full weight of the village's neglect. Roofs had holes patched with mismatched wood, gardens overflowed with weeds, and even the well in the center square stood half dry. a cracked bucket resting beside it. But amidst the decay, life stubbornly clung on. Children ran barefoot across uneven stones, and women tended tiny plots of vegetables with careful hands. Elias walked among them, observing quietly. The villagers approached him at different times, each request small but meaningful. "Could you help lift this crate? The roof of my home is about to collapse. Could you hold the ladder? The crops will fail if someone doesn't water the fields today." Every ask was a reminder. Each small task was a test. Elias felt the pull of responsibility tugging at him, and yet the thought of leaving, of resuming his journey to safer roads and easier paths, lingered at the edge of his mind. By noon, the village elder, a woman whose hair had turned silver long before her time, invited Elias to sit beside the fountain. "I see your hesitation," she said softly, eyes steady. "You could walk away and be none the worse. No one would blame you, but you would carry the weight of knowing what might have been, and what might have been lost." Her words pierced him. He looked around, noticing for the first time the details that told the story of fading care. A mother swept a cracked floor, her hands bleeding from the rough bristles. A child tried to fetch water from the well, but the bucket was too heavy, and it tipped, spilling what little remained. And yet, even among these small disasters, Elias noticed courage, the quiet persistence of people who refused to give up completely. Elias felt the internal struggle tighten like a knot. He thought of the comfortable path waiting beyond the hills, of inns and warm beds, of a life with minimal effort and maximum ease. Yet he also felt the silent plea of the village, the fragile hope in each face that life could still flourish if someone chose to act. Hours passed, and he wandered back to the square, standing before the cracked fountain. Around him, life waited, unsure, fragile, in need of direction. One decision loomed larger than any road he had walked before: to stay and help, risking his comfort, or to leave and protect himself, leaving the village to slowly vanish. Elias's heart thumped in quiet anticipation. The choice was simple in words, yet heavy with consequence. Each path carried its own price. The sun dipped lower, and the village seemed to hold its breath. Elias knew he could not delay much longer. One decision, small yet immense, would determine whether the forgotten village would fade completely or begin to live again. Elias did not leave the village. The decision was quiet at first, almost unnoticed by the world outside, but it carried weight heavier than any road he had ever walked. He began with small acts, carrying water to the withering gardens, helping the blacksmith repair worn tools, lifting broken beams in the crumbling homes. The villagers watched with cautious hope, their initial hesitations slowly turning into smiles and laughter. For the first time in years, the village felt alive. Days turned into weeks. Elias worked from sunrise to sunset, and though his muscles ached and his hands blistered, he felt something he had not known in a long time. Even the elder noticed the change. She came to him one evening as the sun dipped behind the hills. "You could have left," she said softly, "but you stayed. And in staying, you reminded us that life is not only what we take, it is also what we give." Months passed, and the village slowly transformed. The square that had been cracked and empty now hosted markets and gatherings. Homes that had threatened collapse now stood solid, painted in bright colors, laughter spilling from windows. Even travelers who had once passed without notice now stopped to rest, drawn by the warmth and life that Elias and the villagers had nurtured together. Elias smiled, feeling the weight of that single choice. The choice to stay, to help, to care. He understood now how fragile life could be when left unattended, and how powerful even one action could become. He realized that doing nothing is still a choice. Walking away would have been easier, safer, and free of effort, yet it would have condemned the village to slow disappearance. Choosing to act, to sacrifice comfort for responsibility, had restored more than buildings and gardens. It had restored hope, community, and life itself. Years later, the village thrived. Stories of the traveler who stayed spread across the hills, inspiring others to help where they could. Elias himself never left, though he could have returned to the road at any time. The village had become more than a place. It had become a living testament to the ripple effects of one choice. And as he sat beside the now full fountain, listening to the children laugh and the market's bustle, Elias understood the lesson he had carried deeper than any road or inn could teach him. One decision, small as it may seem, can change the course of countless lives. Responsibility may demand effort, sacrifice, and time, but it also brings growth, connection, and hope. To act, to care, and to give is how forgotten things and forgotten people are made unforgettable. The village was no longer forgotten, and neither was Elias.